Hi, welcome to Conversations with the Candidates. My name is Walt Kosmowski, and I'll be your host for this segment. And I have with me today John Frates, who is a candidate for City Council in Ward 6. John?
Walt,
welcome
great to meet you.
The show. Welcome to the show. John, why don't you give us, for people who don't know you, just give us a couple of vitals on you. Where do you live, what you do for a living, your marital status, etc., kids?
Perfect. My name is John Frates. I live at 21 Landers Drive, which is up in the Centerville section of Beverly. I'm married to the former Nancy D'Alfonso, and both of us are lifelong Beverly residents. We have 3 children, Jennifer Mayo, who lives in the Cove, with our newest granddaughter. She's Adeline Margaret. She's 1 year old. And Peter and Julie, they just got married recently and live with us. He is 28 years old. And my son Andrew, 25, and he lives with us as well. Right now I'm semi-retired, I would call it. I'm on an extended leave of absence due to a family medical problem that we're dealing with, but it's not going to affect our campaign at all.
Now, let me ask you the first question out of the chute here. Why is John Frates running for office?
Well, as I mentioned, one of the reasons is I have more time on my hands than I thought. I was a former alderman at large here in the city, and looking back on it, what better way to complete the bookend of my career by coming back in and serving the city that has been so wonderful to us. As I mentioned, we're dealing with a family medical problem, and the outpouring of love and support that we've felt from this community has been overwhelming. We all love the city, but we have all the candidates, I'm sure, are going to say many of the same things, but we have really invested our money and our family in the community, i.e. we've owned property for many, many years. We have owned and operated ice cream coffee shops. Many people will remember the old Porter Farms up in Ryle Side, where we still own the property in a commercial neighborhood zone, as well as Bramble's Cafe, which was in North Beverly. So we own those and operated those for many years. We now own and operate multifamily properties. So that's what I've been doing on the side.
So, John, tell me, what does a lifelong Beverly resident and business owner, former business owner, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing Beverly today?
Well, in my opinion, there's 2 things, 2 levers that we can push. I failed to mention that I was in the financial services field for a very long time, managing large investment advisors for these large banks here in Boston and the surroundings. But there's only 2 levers that any of us can push and control our financial fate, which is increase revenue or decrease spending. And that goes for corporations, it goes for municipalities as well. So the biggest concern that I have for the city, if we're maintaining and controlling our costs to the best of our ability right now, and certainly we'll look at that, but it's to increase revenue. So that's number 1. Where do we get that opportunity? Right now, the Brimble Ave interchange seems to be the best opportunity for us to not only open up retail and commercial space, but it also will lend itself to developing commercial and industrial property that is landlocked presently.
Now, we're going to get to some financial issues and specifically to the Brimble Avenue interchange project. Let me ask you this. If you were to be elected, what would be at the top of your agenda to get accomplished?
Well, for the ward, it would certainly be to maintain and improve our quality of life, which means, i.e. beautification, street improvements. As I'm walking the neighborhoods, I'm surprised at the difficulty in challenging sidewalks and some of the potholes and such that we're encountering. But in order to do that, we need a revenue stream to continue to fix and update that. My wife Nancy is a real estate person here in the city, and people don't realize the impact that the MCAS and the educational scores have on the value of our real estate, as well as the beautification and the upkeep of our property to maintain our property value.
Now, coming in, have you thought about how much time would be necessary to devote to being the Ward 6 councilman?
Yeah, I was an alderman, as I mentioned before. Unfortunately, it was about 20 years ago, but as I've been observing the council meetings and my sister-in-law, who is the campaign manager, the longtime Ward 6 City Councilor, Judith Cronin. I'm very aware of the time involved in this profession, and I look forward to the opportunity. We've found it to be a wonderful, fun family event for us to get back out there and give back what I perceive to be giving back to the community. But I certainly have the time to offer and the skill set necessary to be an effective ward councilor.
Now, for people who aren't familiar with you, you're running for office. I mean, you have a long hiatus here between being on the city council. What would you say that your style is? What makes you tick?
Well, being in sales my entire career, it's being a people person. I perceive the job and the position as being being a conduit for effective transfer of government city services and just information, and also the opposite way. If the constituent has a problem, how can it best be resolved? That would be my role primarily. So that's what I've done my entire career: sales, service, support. Being a store owner, people would not come back to our location if we put out a bad product.
Certainly, certainly. So let me get into some. You talked a little bit about budgeting and so forth. The city council and the mayor are responsible for roughly $105 million city budget, and you've alluded a little bit to your background. But what specific skills do you have that would qualify you to participate in a budgeting process like this?
Excellent question. And what I did as a wealth management advisor is I actually would put on people's portfolio bonds from all different cities and towns. Municipal bonds are, for the wealthy, the most effective way to manage their wealth in a tax-free environment. So the city of Beverly, with their ratings right now and their effective yield, would be a tremendous opportunity, in my opinion, for people to put into their portfolio. So therefore, I'm very familiar with the shortcomings and the strengths of our city as compared to other municipalities.
Now, we continually hear the phrase fiscal responsibility. What does that mean to you in terms of how you'd run a city or help administer a budget?
Well, great point. And fiscal responsibility, in my mind, is not going out spending unnecessarily. So it's looking at bottom line costs, but also having in mind a 5 or a 10-year plan to generate the necessary revenue. We mentioned briefly, we touched on this beautification, streets, sidewalks, parks. The only way to do that is to have a long-range plan so that it can be maintained. If it's not maintained, and really nothing has been done in some of these developments in Centerville, and the streets are really starting to show their age.
Now, you mentioned earlier about balancing a budget, looking at your inflows and your outflows. What, in your mind, what are the critical factors? What are the leverage points specifically as you see them in Beverly's budget, and how you would actually do that balancing act?
Well, the school budget is appropriated to them, and I understand that they have autonomous control over there. So the things that we would have to look at is revenue flows. I believe a lot of the contracts have already been negotiated. I understand the trash with JRM has just been re-signed. So what we want to do is we want to generate in all possible ways revenue streams. Now, we're in the middle of Halloween season. There's 2 million plus just a mile from where we sit right now, tourists. Can we get them over here to Beverly? I think not. I recently took my granddaughter over to Topsfield Fair, and I saw some of the impact that that month-long or 3-week-long enterprise puts on the constituents, and they do put up with it. And I don't think we want to compromise our quality of life. So what we should be looking at is revenue generation, and that's Brimble Ave interchange, things of that nature, opening up a lot of land that is landlocked now.
Okay, well that's a nice segue now. Let's talk about development in Beverly. What is your overall view on the need and the potential for development in Beverly, if you can be as specific as you can be?
Sure. Take a look at downtown right now, especially Rantoul Street, what's happening. We've got the parking garage going in. It's going to be a tremendous opportunity for us. Yet we have to look at managing the traffic outside of that. I remember some of the communities where these parking garages came online, people would still filter out into the neighborhoods. I happen to own a piece of property nearby, and I'm noticing already with the change in the parking meters arrangement that they're now starting to park in front of my property. So we have to get a handle on that. But specifically, it would be a smart growth approach downtown where we have the development and the retail and the housing necessary to support right at those metro centers, the trains and such. And I think downtown Rantoul Street is a great example of what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And what are the factors that you feel need to be evaluated in considering a development project?
Well, obviously the traffic impact, and we're hearing that loud and clear from the citizens up around the Montserrat area, where, by the way, I first lived, so I know some of the neighbors intimately in the problem areas. So traffic, environmental impact, but what is the trade-off? Where is the revenue? Where are then we going to have problems with impacting our city services, schools, trash pickup, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the Brimble Avenue 128 interchange project, and of course, that's been a big topic of discussion here lately, rather contentious.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that, on the process? What are your thoughts on the project itself, the pros and cons, and what are your thoughts after you've done that? What are your thoughts on the process of how we've handled that?
Well, the project I'm in favor of. I listened to the debates, I read, and I had an opportunity to see a lot of the planning that went around it. This particular issue is more of a land swap issue, moving the developer's land that they own by right, which they can develop without any impact from the neighbors or the city, i.e. traffic interchanges, traffic controls, some of the roundabouts that they're talking about to mitigate this traffic. It was simply a land swap to move it closer to Route 128 and then design a way to access some of the land across the way so we could develop that. The process, from what I heard from some of the neighbors, it wasn't as open. But I think there was some misinformation. Years ago, maybe 05, 06 is when they actually did the zoning change. And that wasn't as contentious as this last time. I think the neighbors felt that they could stop the project in its tracks completely, and instead it was more of a land swap issue. Could we have been out front a little bit better? I understand there were some meetings with the state that were held during very difficult hours, 10 in the morning, for instance, I heard, and people couldn't get there. So at all costs, we need the people involved. And the solution is a great solution, which is to invite four of the neighbors to sit on an advisory ad hoc type subcommittee.
Right, and of course you're talking about Councilor Martin's proposal.
Correct.
That was accepted.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, if you're elected, you're certainly going to be involved, certainly in finishing phase 1 and into phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a takeaway do you have now from seeing how this has evolved so far? What learnings do you think that you've come away with?
Well, I think what has to happen is we have to get out in front of the issue a little bit better, define it so much more, and also use social media, because my understanding is a lot of the information that was disseminated to the neighbors was done through social media. Mm-hmm. People who never really sat face-to-face with each other, but really just started a Facebook campaign or some sort of social media, and a lot of information, and sometimes some of the things that are being said are not really accurate or courteous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to ask you about a few other development projects, and you as a business owner and having owned property and run businesses probably have a certain perspective on some of these issues. The former McKay School that's been laying dormant there for a number of years, what would you want to do with that? What would be your recommendation for that property?
That's a great question, because I thought you were going to go more towards the Briscoe. I haven't been in McKay in a long, long time, and I see it being used more for exercises with civil defense. I see them up there quite a bit, but I don't really know the impact. I know there was some asbestos abatement years ago. I can't say that it's a historic building in any way, the way Briscoe is. When you go inside Briscoe, immediately you can see condos, you can see some of the fine woodwork, some of the large ceilings. McKay, I can't really see if that would be contiguous to the Cummings Center, if it would be valuable for them in any way. Really, I don't know. I don't have an answer yet on that one. But
do you think the city should still try to sell it? I mean, they tried to sell it a couple times. They didn't get what they thought was a fair value for it.
Yeah, I would hold off. I think the most important thing right now is the middle school. So if we can do anything with the middle school and improve, we must have that to complete our whole educational infrastructure. So if we can do something with Briscoe then, and I think that's a very valuable piece. It's quite a nice piece of property over there. The building is old, and I think some development firm would be interested in that. McKay, on first blush, I can't say that there's some significant historical opportunity to it. I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Well, let's get over to that whole Memorial Briscoe project. Now, we apparently have gotten the go-ahead from the state. The state looks like it's going to subsidize a certain amount of that. And that would make, they'd either build a new property there in the Memorial footprint or rehab it, but that would leave the Briscoe as being available. So give us a little bit more. You kind of touched on what you thought were the possibilities. Tell us a little bit more about what you think.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I was invited by members of the school committee to tour not only Beverly High but also Briscoe this summer into the early fall, just before school opened. I've been in the high school so many times, and it's such a beautiful building. It is a great structure. It's conducive to learning. And then you go over to Briscoe, and you know, I haven't been in there since my kids performed at a play, but never really seeing what the classroom settings are like and the difficulties and challenges they're having, especially some of these special ed classrooms that are operating out of a closet, operating in hallways, operating down in that basement. I'm very cognizant now of handicap accessibility, and the day we were there, the elevator wasn't working at all. So we've got to do something, and it looks like we are on that path, whether it's to improve Memorial, to knock it down and start fresh, but that seems to be the most logical choice. That would leave Briscoe as the building that, in my mind, has the most value right now, from what I could see. Now, whether maybe a college would want to go there, or somebody could annex that. Maybe Montserrat, they're starting to bustle a little bit. I would never propose that they go out of their downtown setting because they're so integral to our downtown, but maybe an annex down there if it's not for a developer.
Now, there's been talk over the last decade probably about a new fire or a new police station, new fire station, whether they should be combined or separate and so forth. Do you think that that's something that we can, without everything else that's going on in the city, is that something that you think we could get into in the next couple of years? Where do you see that development?
Well, we have to, and you mentioned a decade or so. Believe it or not, it's been a generation or so that they've been talking about this. We have to, and I don't know if after we build the middle school we can then look towards that public service building, police fire building. The only thing we don't want to do is limit, with our limited fire, is to limit accessibility throughout the whole city. But we have to do something with that.
Now, there's been talk also about waterfront development. Where, you know, with this whole restaurant, proposed restaurant project, Black House Center has been dragging on. It's in the courts and so forth. What are your thoughts on waterfront development? And is one restaurant going to make a waterfront development? What do you think we need to do there?
Yeah, it's a start. I travel an awful lot, either for business or, believe it or not, with Boston College baseball team. My son is the director of operations, so I get to tag along. It's a wonderful experience. So anytime I go to a new city, I always look for a quaint, I don't want to go to the chains, a quaint downtown, which we have here in Beverly. It's a burgeoning village, bustling. It's great. It's so exciting with all the different restaurant capabilities. But the waterfront is where it's at. If you had your druthers and you're on the road, you always want to seek out an opportunity to be by the water. Very quietly the other night, after that contentious debate with Brimble Ave, the lease was submitted to the city council. It didn't get much play, but it looks like it is moving forward with the Black Cow. So that's great. And Walt, it's a start, and we have to start somewhere. And again, that's another generational. It's not just decade, it's generational that they've been talking about developing that waterfront.
Now, let's expand that a little bit more. You know, the waterfront, the notion of Beverly as a tourist destination. You know, we have people go to Gloucester, they have so many things that you can do there. People go to Salem, people go to Newburyport. Can we develop Beverly to the point where it would be, it would compete with these cities as a tourist destination? What do you think about that?
Yeah, you know, I've given it some thought, and unless we talk about the Balch property or maybe Taft's bathtub, that's a famous relic that we still have left over from the old days. I don't know what we could do to make and generate much more tourism, and I'm not sure the citizens would want that. You know, the opportunity really comes from opening up our retail and commercial development, so therefore we can have that smart growth and generate revenue that way. You're right about Gloucester. There is something magical about going near the waterfront, and there's that waterfront theme again. Salem, we had a business over in Salem as well for many years, and that's such a difficult time right now to get through there. And you know, I just like Beverly's style of life. That's what I love so much about it right now.
Now you started speaking a little bit about the Beverly schools. I want to return to that subject. Where do you think we are right now as far as the state of the Beverly School District and Beverly schools?
Well, they're improving significantly. I took my daughter through the other night. Now she's Beverly High class of 2000, so she's been away for many, many years, either in London or in New York, and moved back to help us out. It's such a wonderful experience having her around, and we now are blessed with our one-year-old grandchild that is going to go through the Beverly schools. When she saw this facility being Beverly High School, she could not believe it. She was physically she was looking for the pails that used to be out in the hallway to catch the rainwater. So look, our accreditation problems are over. Scores are on the upswing. It's helping out all of our property values. The residential is in great demand. This all is tied to our community. And it comes back to Ward 6. A lot of these issues that we've talked about, which are citywide, impact all of us.
Now, right now we're in a search for a new superintendent.
Right.
What are your thoughts on what we should be looking for, or what result we're looking for in a superintendent?
Well, it all comes down to leadership, and you know, I was pleasantly surprised when I opened up my water bill, not because of the water fee, but what the insert was, the flyer in there. The school committee puts out the characteristics that they're looking for in the form of leadership. So it's so multifaceted. Leadership in general, dealing with so many different facets, technology enhancements, the ability to juggle so many positions and facets and be on top of things. It really is quite specific in what they're looking for, and I wholeheartedly agree with what they're doing.
Now, you started to talk a little bit about your ward, where you're running, Ward 6, which is where I live.
Okay, great.
Well,
I'll ask you for your vote right after this.
Now, do you think, are there any specific issues that you think are specific to Ward 6, and any areas that you would strive to improve, or any projects or concerns that you have that you would want to address in Ward 6?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, we touched on the main points. We're hearing about traffic quite a bit. You know, any of us who are out there actively campaigning are seeing the raceway that Essex Street has become. Even on the backside, as I go to my daughter's property over there on in the Cove, Stanley Street, Cole Street, the traffic issues and concerns, the potholes, the street conditions, just improving and maintaining our quality of life. But more importantly, I think, being that conduit, as I spoke before, and that is so essential to a great dialogue between the municipality and the constituency, and I see myself in that position.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, we're sort of running down our time here, John, and what I'd like to do is ask you a question. If the voters out there were to say, John Frates, why should I vote for you? John Frates, why should I entrust the management of the city to you? I'd like you to kind of give an answer to that question, and at the same time kind of make a closing statement on why you think people should vote for you, and we'll let you take a couple minutes to do that.
Well, great, Walt. Thank you for this opportunity to get out and meet you and our viewers. One of the things that we're going to face now is a vacuum in leadership. The mayor is stepping aside, and whether you were for him or against him, we're going to measure all future mayors against Bill Scanlon. He has been the longest serving mayor in Beverly history and has done so much for the city. So there's a big vacuum leadership. Also, the city council is going to be turning over quite a bit. I know intimately a lot of the people on the council presently, as well as meeting a lot of the candidates. So I won't have any learning curve when it comes to taking the job over, since I did it once before and am well known and know the people in the council already, as well as other leadership positions. We're looking for a new commissioner. A new police chief, and we're looking for a new superintendent. So there's a big leadership. That leadership word keeps coming back over and over again, and that's why I feel my strengths are. I have been an executive sales manager for many of the large banks. I've owned my own business, running the family that we're doing now, and also taking it upon ourselves to do everything we can to find a cure and an answer for ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. So we're down in Washington going to advocacy days. We're meeting with all of our senators and representatives. So that's where I feel that I can really make a difference here. I've got a unique skill set, and I just happen to be available at this present moment. Thank you.
Well, John Frates, thank you,
Walt.
Very much. And I'd like to thank our viewers for watching. You've been watching BevCam's Conversations with the Candidates, and I'm your host for this episode, Walt Kosmowski, and we've been talking with Ward 6 candidate John Frates. Thank you, John, and thank you to our viewers, and we'll see you next time.